thank you so much for everyone staying or joining us today. I thought it would be great to just kick it off and have each of you kind of share a little bit about your career history, some of the big brands you've worked for, and where you are currently in your role today.
Andy Reichgut. So I started at Syracuse working on derivative bonds, collateralized mortgage obligations, the cause of the financial crisis. And the only thing I learned about that is I understand the movie The Big Short. Went back to school, got my MBA, and then got into brand marketing because I really wanted to build stuff. That's what I enjoyed doing. Worked at a lot of big companies. Worked on Snickers and innovation from Mars. Cleaning products like Lysol spray, classic pickles, Duncan Hines, Bird's Eye, a bunch of food is really where I spent the majority of my time. About 10 years ago, I went in more entrepreneurial and got into natural food. So I've been working on natural food for the last 10 or 12 years, and currently CEO of a small little brand called Dr. Praeger's that your kids used to buy. That's a problem that we have to fix.
Oh, really?
Well, they used to buy. You didn't say they
Well,
buy.
because they're a little older, so I feel like they
Okay.
That's I bet you might hate them if I do. So now I'm going to go back behind.
Mikio Fujitsuka, fellow SU alum as well, class of 98 or 99. I worked with my friend in 99. Yeah, similar. Went to MBA after 3 years working in Honda in Japan, where I'm originally from. And after graduation, I joined Johnson & Johnson for 20 plus years. And recently, the Johnson & Johnson spun off its consumer unit as a Kenvue, so as I'm part of that team. And used to manage a variety of different brands, Band-Aid, Listerine, you name it, within that business. We have some of the beauty business as well. I was managing sales and marketing for one of the prestige beauty that we acquired. So currently I manage consumer care business for Global Ed. Basically it's a whole entire world of all brands and all markets for all brands that we have within Kenvue, including Aveeno, Neutrogena, Tylenol, and what name it. And yeah, so that's a social media team and contact centers worldwide and hundreds of people.
That's small, just a small region.
Yeah, so that's that's my scope.
Cheryll kind of precluded it, so I'm a proud Syracuse Newhouse PR major alum. There you go, see? PR 1994, but I am more proud that I've got a 2028 that will be in Newhouse grads. We're very proud of that. So PR and corporate communication strategists both worked on the agency side, working with major brands, but in-house for both McDonald's and Ferrero. You don't know Ferrero, but it's the brands Nutella, Tic Tac, Kinder, Baby Ruth, Butterfinger, all those brands, and then through acquisitions, Famous Amos, Keebler Cookies. So run the gamut of CPG, both from the restaurant perspective and food. Again, I love what I do, and I, even just this whole topic of, what brand relevance and loyalty from the beginning, started my career 25, over 30 years ago. It's brands want relevance, they want loyalty. It's the how and then what that has changed. But the need for relevance and loyalty, that remains the same. It's how we get there is what is changing. What's so exciting about being in the roles that we're in.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess perfect segue. I think my first question to you, to all of you, I think if you could respond, is just around what has changed with brand relevance and loyalty in the last, I would say 2 decades, because I feel like there's just been such a dramatic change in the way that consumers look to brands, believe in brands, and then loyalty is a whole other part of this question. So I don't know who would love to kick it off.
I think, as we listen to all the sessions today, right? So relevance, it's either you create the relevance, so we have brands that insert themselves into culture or insert themselves in the news of the day. Then there's, if you listen to Candace or even some of the brands who are here, it's how does your product, I think it's American Express, how are you creating a product that is relevant for someone, and then that's how you create relevance. So it's either you're inserting or manufacturing the relevance, or you're observing what's going on among your target audiences, and you create the relevance, or you create the relevant product rather, and that's how you build loyalty. So I think it's a combination of both.
I think another thing I would add on top of that is it's important for any of the person who manages a brand, even your own brand, right, personal brands. It's important to identify your brand persona, who you are. If your brand that you're managing is a human, what would he be or he be? and then live up to it. Like, do not be schizophrenic about who she is, who he is, because sometimes brand going into the conversation that they shouldn't based on the brand persona, and that's where the consumer caught it, right? So you just have to live into who she is, who he is, once you build your brand persona. Which wasn't necessary back then, but one-way communication and teaching world.
I would just add in terms of relevance, the thing I've learned in my career, mostly working on food products, a lot of them that need to be renovated. Old brands like Duncan Hines, for example, or Bird's Eye. The thing I learned is, it sounds so simple, but you have to start with an insight into the consumer. What problem are you trying to solve? And as you go through that, if it's like Bird's Eye, and I'm sure if I ask people to raise their hands, how many people tried a keto diet, how many people tried low carb, low fat, low sugar, gluten-free, organic. There's a million fads of diets that come and go, but the one message that has never changed, I'm a lot older than probably everybody in this room, and it's true as far back as I go, is eat your fruit and vegetables, right? And people are trying to figure out, we don't have a problem in this country eating fruit, we have a major problem eating vegetables. There's a whole ton of reasons why. So when you're trying to figure out a consumer insight, first, a brand like Bird's Eye or Veggies Made Great, or even Dr. Praeger's now that are brands that try to make vegetables easier for people to consume, it's very functional. So if you have like a benefit ladder, there's the functional benefit. This makes it easy for me to eat vegetables because they taste good and it's easy to make. But on a brand, for example, like Duncan Hines, we bought Duncan Hines in 2006, and dollar cake mixes competing with Betty Crocker and Pillsbury is a brutal fucking business to be in. So how do you build relevance when you have a Me Too product with other great brands up there? And it's about the insight. And I'll never forget, we did in-homes with consumers, ethnography. And I had never really done it before. We went to the store with a consumer, we bought product, and then we came home and they started baking. Are there any bakers in here? Yeah, you guys are nuts. The level of how people care so deeply about what they bake is extraordinary. It's more of an expression of them. Because they're usually not eating it, they're usually giving it or doing it for somebody else. So anyway, so we go back to this home, and 4 different houses. Every single time the person pulled out an old index card from like the 50s that was her grandmother's that had little red stains on it because it's for a red velvet cake. And they would tear up and get emotional about, I have to buy Duncan Hines because my grandmother said buy Duncan, right? So tapping into that emotion, that's the consumer insight, that baking is an expression of myself, and it's honoring my grandparents. That's when you can find that gold. You don't have to be on the functional end of the ladder. You can be on the emotional.
So
And
you're,
that's loyalty.
and great, you're like basically answering my other questions, which is awesome. But no, leading into that a little bit further, can you share a little bit about how in your organizations, or with clients that you work with, how you're tapping into that consumer, narrative, like the feedback that you're receiving from consumers about product development, or how to shape the future of the products that you're looking at, or what have you. Like, I feel like that's crucial. So can you just share how that works for you at your org?
I mean, multiple ways to do this, but one of the things that more and more up and coming for the last 10 years is the co-creation of influencers. So like, historically in the past in the CPG business, we had people that were building within our own in-house, and then we don't necessarily need help from outside. But right now, with the entry barrier is so low for our competitor set. Anyone, you and I, can start any startup with these private label manufacturers and then sell it on Amazon, FBA, and then do it in the social media advertising. So anyone can enter the competitor space in many ways in CPGs. In order to compete with that, it's so important for us to also equip ourselves and align with the right influencers and co-create with some of them. So we had a lot of examples of that.
So that drives a huge, like you see sales impact on that too. So.
Yeah, but it happens a lot of different ways. I love the idea of private labeling something, testing on Amazon, and taking it into a brand potentially. The Three Wishes guy, I forgot his name already, but he had a buyer from Target ask him to make a Quaker Oats knockoff. I'm not sure that's usually a very bad strategy, because the buyer's quite often are doing it for ulterior motives, but it sounds like it worked for him. But innovation and ideas, at least in food, can come from anywhere. You mentioned that your kid does no longer eats because they were a product for little kids.
The dinosaur one.
The dinosaur ones, right? No, exactly. I mean, trust me, I hear it every day. You're not unique. That's an insight that these kids and these parents have such an affinity for this product that kids age out at age 6 because they're too mature for it now. Well, it's a pretty obvious insight, but that's the kind of thing you say, okay, well, how do we make something relevant as kids age up? Because mom and dad still really like the idea of their kids getting this product.
I saw on your LinkedIn something called a crispy.
Crunchy burger.
Oh, sorry, crunchy burger.
Yeah, that was.
Can you talk about the success of that, just because we're talking about?
Yeah, this is a great story. This is very much like Ian's 3 wishes. So we're a $100 million business, but I've been working there for about a year. We had a new buyer at Whole Foods, which is a very high percentage of our veggie burger business. And he was new, and he said, my category is down 20%. You're my #1 brand. You know, can we meet and talk about some innovation you have? And we weren't innovating at all in burgers. It was all stuff for you, like snacks. And the head of sales called me up or told him, yeah, this was on a Monday. On Friday, we'll have a presentation to you of all our innovation. So we were like, I swear again, fuck, what are we going to do? And we just started digging into like insights and talking to people. And everybody says, I love your veggie burger. So when I bite into it, it has the same texture as the bun. And we were reading that online, through social. We were hearing that from friends. They're mushy, right? So they taste good, but the texture is way off. Well, we know how to batter and bread things in our plant. So we came up with the crunchy veggie burger. And it's just pure luck. But we presented samples to him the following Monday. His office is in Jersey City. I drove down there and gave it to him myself. Told him this is going to revolutionize your category. We have a whole bunch of other innovation, which was a lie. But this is the only one we think you should carry. And he took it, and it's been a great success for us.
I'm obsessed with that story. I love it. I gotta try this crispy, crunchy. Sorry. It's crunchy. All right. For years, I feel like on social media, there's so many brands leaning on a brand purpose, and then saying 10% of proceeds go to X, Y, Z. How do we feel about that moving forward? Do we feel like this is contrived? Do we feel like what is your take on brand purpose and making it seem the most authentic today?
I think it goes back to what you said about, is it true to you, right? Because I think everyone is jumping on this bandwagon. We need to purpose. Yes, but make sure you're picking a purpose that is authentic to you. It's not like all of a sudden we are going to, support pets when you have nothing to do with pets or you don't have a reason for doing it. And then it also goes down to, okay, because whether you're a private company or a public company, ultimately we're all running businesses, right? It is to sell a thing. So how can you explain to your stakeholders that supporting this purpose, this higher, elevation of, what your mission is for the greater good, how is that going to help sell the thing that you are tasked with selling? How does that bring your brand to life? How does it make it relevant, make it loyal? Because part of the purpose is also, you leveraging that, again, if it's authentic, to create loyalty and relevance to the audience you're trying to reach.
Yeah, it only makes sense if there's a reason to do it. Like part of your backstory, part of why your founder started it, part of what your mission is as a brand. Otherwise,
Because they'll sniff out the BS meter, and it'll look contrived, and it'll look trite, and it'll look like you're just doing, charity for PR, PR purposes, and it will fail.
You just need one person calling on social media and it's going to expand, right? It didn't happen 10 years ago.
That's my point. Yeah. So switching to loyalty a little bit, do you have loyalty programs that you guys have started? How have they evolved over time? I mean, I think about like loyalty programs of yesteryear are very, very different than they are now. So can you share in either past history or in your current role today, like how that impacts like the long-term value of the client? So
You can look up what company I used to work for. So some McDonald's at a time, right? So think about it. So I was back, 2000 in like the 90s and 2000s where it was fast food was bad. right? Supersize Me, they stopped calling it the Supersize Meal because of everything. So to create a loyalty program where you were encouraging, rewarding people to eat there was kind of counter, or perpetuated this whole thing of like, oh my gosh, fast food. Fast forward now, because now there are apps, and now you're using not necessarily a loyalty program, but in essence, it's a loyalty program, but it's wrapped up in an app. And there's a benefit to the consumer of, okay, here are rewards, here, and now it's part of how companies, QSRs and fast food restaurants and everyone are reaching consumers. So it really depends upon where you are in your, brand journey, your business journey, and also what's going on in the world. At the time, we were saying, like, why don't you have a loyalty program? And, all the owner-operators and people wanted it, and the PR people are like, no, we cannot have a loyalty program because of what? So, there's reasons that they change.
I've seen so many times that some brand join the bandwagon of a loyalty program and they realize that it's not sustainable and then they terminate, and a backlash by the consumer fans. So don't do it if it doesn't fit your profile. Also, it's important to think about for the people who are not in the program, how they view the people in the program. That's also important.
Do your retailers tie into this too? Like,
You could.
loyalty? Yeah.
Yeah, you could, but that's also driven by the particular partner or retail partners. So for the case for our companies, we have an exclusive, long-standing relationship with Target for what's called Build Your Own First Aid Kit program. So basically, you buy a bunch of our company's products like a Band-Aid in your store and whatnot, and then you get a free bag of a first aid kit inside, and that's been the loyalty program execution that we've been doing for a long time. Yeah, but that's an incentive for us to get the right display and support. But also it's a consumer centricity at the end of the day. So.
Anything?
No, I think he's the expert on this.
So, how do you, as far as challenged audiences, can you speak to sort of the evolving consumer landscape? And, obviously we're talking about brand and loyalty here. Like, what are some of your challenges, or how have you either overcome them, or how are you, kind of dealing with them today?
Well, your question reminded me of in my other alma mater, where I went and got my MBA. There's an alumni there who wrote a book called Fizz, F-I-Z-Z, that talks about influencers. But he's been talking about influencers for 25 years, so well before the online influencer became something. And he talks about how 10% of all of us in this room are real influencers. Like, if we hear about something, we're driven to tell our friends. And not only are we driven to tell our friends and family, our friends and family know we're the source. So it's about finding those people versus hiring an influencer. It's finding the people that are going to become pure organic advocates for your product, your brand, based on who they are. And that's the magic. That's the special sauce when you can look at doing it that way, which I'm sure is PR.
Yeah.
All of it PR.
Yeah.
From a PR perspective, it's, I just tell my teams, like, it's storytelling for action, right? So the storytelling, or telling the story, that's not changed. How we tell that story is changing. It's, are we using influencers? What the action is. You want to change an opinion, you want to drive a vote, you want, to have someone do an action, whether it's buy, think something differently. It used to be back in the day, you'd get a story and clients would say, I want to be in USA Today, okay? Or I used to work on Nikon. So David Pope, you wanted him to write about you because then when people were researching the camera they wanted to buy, they would look him up. So that's a means to an end, so it's a research. It was also a tool that we could give to the sales force to say, okay, here's what David Pope, you want to sell this camera, here's what. So that was a means to an end. Now the end is, how does a media, whether it's content from a content creator or a story that runs, what is its means to an end? So what's the end? So it's a story runs, how is the media outlet sharing how is it shareable? And back to your point, it's like, how do you get that consumer who reads it to share it with who they know? It's like, oh, I just saw a story. And GMA just wrote something about McDonald's or whatever brand. It's they're sharing it. Does that story now have a link to go buy the thing, right? And then it perpetuates. So again, it's how are you taking this communications, whether it's earned or organic? It's not just securing the placement or the content. It's how do you continue so that there is no end, or the end ends at a sale. That's, I think, is what I think is so exciting for PR. It's not just about the story anymore. It's to keep the cycle going.
It's like a charity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like part of that machine, like, what do you think the sustainability of like creating credibility within that brand? Like, what do you think, like, there's obviously like new brands that start out and they, push heavily to social and they get a lot of direct sales, but like, what is, like, the Three Wishes co-founder talked about in 15 years, he wants to be Cheerios. It's like, how is that, like, how do you think one goes about becoming the next Cheerios? Like, I mean, like, I don't know, like, what, honestly, like.
Well, you lead a brand, you lead brands. From what I'm seeing right now, it used to be you get the celebrity or famous person to tout your product and you think that's the holy grail. I am seeing, I think it was said in the other, some of these sessions, it's now going back to, you said, like, word of mouth, who you know. People are being, are not necessarily believing, whatever name, insert celebrity. They're listening to all the mom that I saw on the, on the fields, or back to school, or whatever it is, or whatever the audience. You were finding out, sure, Cheryl, you found out about Dr. Praeger's. Were you seeing an ad or just some celebrity? It's no, you heard from your daughter, or you heard from your mom. It was relevance, going back to relevance. So who is the audience that the person you're listening to that's relevant for your situation, which goes back to, again, it's different audiences. We can't just mass say, okay, ubiquitous, here's the thing to reach this audience. It's gotta be segmented. And what's relevant for one audience is not necessarily relevant for another. And it really is going back to like this grassroots. It's like there's a resurgence of back to basics.
Not sure I missed the earlier part of this presentation, so not sure how many times AI being talked about in the sessions. But assuming some people have already said it, and I'll just say one more time, I apologize for that. But one of the examples that I can see, and I won't disclose the agency that we work with. This agency was originally founded by the guy who used to work in CIA, focusing on identifying the terrorist. The way you have that the terrorist groups are so small in numbers, but has a strong influence in causing an action for people around you in the social network. So this technology that developed in the counterintelligence, he left the company, or the agency, and he started the company for the beauty influencer, the same technology. Because they realized that the mode of how the beauty people are being influenced is exactly the same. Right. So
Very scary.
right. But so technology like that is there, and I think that gap right now it's a race to that technology advancement, and the day is there. And then somebody says scary, but things to balance that is the notion of privacy. So I cover all the brands for worldwide. And as you see in California or say like GDPR in Europe, you probably heard of, there's more and more countries around the world that is very restrictive of privacy information, but rights to be forgotten. And you have to balance the information of what you need to be collecting. And obviously you have to be transparent about it. But also for the consumer benefit, you don't want to take the information of the personal information. Because you probably had the information that you provided more than you needed it. Why do you have to put this information for that brand? That's a frustration for the consumer as well. So you have to think about the consumer centricity. Only get what you need for your business purposes, or help the consumers. And don't collect anything more than beyond. That's one of the things that is so important and more important worldwide.
But then it's this whole like GEO, SEO, right? It used to be all about SEO and what are you doing, but now it's like you have to worry about GEO too, and what is being generated when you're searching for products or for information.
It's a responsibility, just like I said earlier about the brand persona, right? Like if you're brand persona for the brand you're managing is say favorite aunt for whoever the target is, right? You don't want that favorite aunt to disclose all the information and leak the information to random people, right? You have to live into it. Like you're collecting information for only what you need to satisfy your constituencies and consumers.
I think there was a huge drive to collect first-party data, especially among like CPGs who had a lot of reliancy on the retailers in terms of telling them about their consumer. So how do you feel about that? Does it bother you still that the retailers have so much data, or is it about working partnerships that you kind of explained earlier?
Well, I'm sure you would probably agree with this. The retailers are 60-year-old men and women who have no idea what data is. So there's some that are the exception, but grocery retail is an old archaic business that folks like Walmart are doing an exceptional job leveraging data to take advantage of an archaic business model, people like that. But the data that they get is from people like us. We tell them the story. And I was just putting a story together last night with my consumer insights person for a very large retailer about why their veggie burger category is not optimized. And this is the whole thing about data. There is the noise, and then there's the signal. You could give me any bits of data about my business, and I could put a great story together. 20% of the time, it's true. You can make data say anything. And when you're the person receiving the data or trying to figure out what it's saying to you, it's so critical to keep in mind noise versus signal. What's really happening versus what's just kind of ancillary data that's in the data set.
And like, so in that vein, what would be noise? Like, do you have an example? I don't know, I'm just really fascinated by this. Like, what, like, it's like major business decisions are being made on this stuff.
I'll give you a really very specific example. So in one of our categories, this veggie burger category, there's two segments. There's the fake meat, we call it meat mimic. It's beyond impossible. People that are trying to turn a leaf into a cheeseburger. And then there's a veggie burger, a black bean, a California, whatever it is. And the meat mimic has been an absolute insane roller coaster ride. Huge during COVID, then way down, and now it's showing growth again. But the growth is because they went from 15 different SKUs to 3 different SKUs. So all the SKUs that are on the shelf are like, look at us, we're growing 40%. Dr. Praeger's growing 30%. Our perfect meat mimic burger, which everybody should buy because it actually has pea protein, not soy, and it's got 3 vegetables blended into it. Sweet potato, carrots, and some other vegetable. So you're going to eat a meat mimic burger, eat that one.
I guess
But
it's not mushy either.
no, it's actually a great product. But the data says, oh, meat mimic's on the rise. Everybody should get back into that. The pendulum swings too far. That's the noise. The real story is that the true veggie forward, where you're turning a vegetable and turning a bunch of vegetables and making it into a burger that's healthy, delicious, teaches kids how to eat vegetables. That's where the signal is right now. People don't want a science project. They want the real product. And you can look at the data and make 2 different conclusions. If there's so much noise out there.
Love it. Switching a little bit to personal things. What is a brand that you were most loyal to, and what is a brand you believe your child to be most loyal to?
So it's funny, Candace was talking about Tarte. So must be really tough for the beauty brands because there's so many mechanisms for them to just like try things constantly, right? You've got the Ipsy bag that gets your, constantly these new things and they use it until it's gone. There's constant, Instagram, like even I would be a sucker for it. I'll see, I'm like, oh, let me go get that. Or Elizabeth was saying, this is the newest thing. But I think what happens is for brands, it's what's relevant to you and kind of, I think, you're leading into nostalgia. I mean, if you notice, like all the 90s and 2000s or like the 80s stuff is coming back. So I think loyalty, is built on emotional connection and what memories they evoke for you, whether it's you as a kid or even for you as a parent. Right now, I think Disney, does it really, really well. We were talking about this. Disney, you think it's a kid brand, but then as you as an adult, they suck, kind of done the Comic-Con thing with the D23, even with, who's Phineas and Ferb fans, like that. I love that show because my kids grew up with it, and now they're 21 and 19, and the new series, I guess, is coming out. They're watching it. So then for me as an adult, I watch it with them because it evokes memories for me. So I think the favorite brands or the ones that you're loyal to are the ones that evoke strong memories, positive memories for you.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I know you gave us the previous questions and whatever, right? But yeah, I think the Tide, for example, is a good example for it because they're not really selling detergent. They're selling memory of a family, right? The scent. So I think those are, I use Tide, not necessarily for that reason, but I think it's a good example of like, you gotta think about the all five sensory. How do you make sure you differentiate with the consumers, not just the, like a classic consumer experience that you would expect from competitive set.
Like Andy, you said with the Dunkin' Hines, right? Like if you wrote it in the recipe, you're buying, whether it's good, bad, or whatever, you're buying that because it evokes a memory, evokes an emotion.
You know, one thing I was gonna talk about a little bit, which is a little different from like a typical kind of aspired brands and things, but how many people know Rachel Cruz? It's a Dave Ramsey's daughter. Yeah. So you probably heard of Dave Ramsey's finance, and he came to realize that he's getting older, and he started creating his franchise. And his daughter, Rachel Cruz, started creating some interesting content. And I think it started having a whole new different influence for what Dave was trying to achieve, but completely right audience, because Rachel herself is a mother of two. And I feel like one of the brands, like if your brand is getting older, you gotta find your way to reinvent yourself. And thankfully, I think that Dave Ramsey did it. The Ramsey did figure out the way to do it through her daughter. But I think the brands that reinvent itself, right? Another Procter & Gamble example, like Old Spice, right? Like it's a reinvent themselves constantly. I think those are brands that requires a lot, deserve a lot of respect by the brand community.
So true. It's so true.
You had mentioned Cheerios at the beginning of the question, right?
Yeah.
So there's a brand, it's not one of my favorite brands, we use the product, but Rayo's tomato sauce. What the fuck? It's a $600 million business in killing everybody in this old, outdated category with Unilever and big players behind the other brands. And it's just this magical algorithm of what they were able to choose to achieve. It's extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
The other one that in 2002, I was working in frozen food. I was running Hungry Man Frozen Dinners, and the head private equity guy came to me and he said, "We just talked to the people at Smuckers. They're launching this thing, a frozen peanut butter bread sandwich." And I said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever. We should not get into it. It's so easy to make a. Who needs a frozen peanut butter sandwich?
Yeah.
Uncrustables is $1 billion.
That's right.
So sometimes, like, ideas like a better tomato sauce or a frozen peanut butter jelly sandwich, if the algorithm is right, if you get the price, the positioning, the product, obviously, and it's all based on an insight, you know, you can build something really powerful.
It's timing too.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, well, do we have time, or we wrap it up? Maybe, we have time for one question. Anybody?
It's not really a question, but it's interesting when you bring up Rayo's, because I think that really started more in like the storytelling phase, and it's kind of impossible to get in there, and it's the way to experience Rayo's. I mean, it's a small little shop. I remember during COVID, they allowed people to do pickup, and everyone, it honestly wasn't even that good, but everyone did it. I think that's what made it so special, is that
You're getting into your home when you
yeah,
go
it's
there.
like you're able to have that experience, and they made it feel like limited, like hard to get to.
That exclusivity is huge.
Yeah.
Timing.
That exclusivity is one of the greatest unused strategies
Right.
in all of.
Like we don't know what the Ragu restaurant is, you know. That gives mass, that gives small and specialty at a scale.
Oh my God, my son, 14 years old, it's like the exclusivity thing with Eric Emanuel, like the $150 mesh shorts I was saying, small drops, it's ridiculous. Yeah, anyway, well, thank you all.